The photograph trembles in my weathered hands as I sit in my small living room, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the hardwood floor I refinished myself last spring. It's a simple apartment, nothing like the sprawling house I once called home, but it's mine. Every corner, every decision, every breath I take here belongs to me. I stare at the faces frozen in time, Sarah's radiant smile, her arm draped protectively around my shoulders. David stands behind us, his hand resting on our daughter's shoulder, that easy grin he wore so well. Emma and Jake, my grandchildren, sit cross-legged at our feet, their gap-toothed smiles bright as summer sunshine. We're all gathered around my kitchen table, the same oak table where I'd served thousands of meals, where Robert and I had shared our morning coffee for 37 years. But it's my own face that stops me cold every time I look at this picture. My smile is there, carefully arranged, but my eyes tell a different story. There's something hollow in them, something desperate. I remember the exact moment this photo was taken, 15 years ago. I remember the ache in my cheeks from holding that expression, the way my hands shook as I gripped the edge of the table beneath the frame. I remember thinking, even then, that something was terribly wrong with this picture. The wedding invitation sits on my coffee table, cream-colored cardstock with elegant script, Emma Rose Patterson requests the honor of your presence. My granddaughter. 23 years old now, getting married next month. The same little girl who used to beg me to make her pancakes in the shape of butterflies, who would curl up in my lap and ask me to tell her stories about the old country. I haven't seen Emma in over 3 years. Not since the confrontation. Not since the day the truth finally came spilling out like water from a broken dam. The apartment feels smaller suddenly, and I set the photograph down with careful precision. My hands don't shake anymore, that's one thing I've gotten back. The tremor that plagued me for years, the one Sarah always pointed out to others with that concerned daughter voice, Mom's getting so shaky lately. I worry about her living alone. Gone now, along with the crushing weight in my chest that made every breath feel like drowning. I walk to my kitchen, where I eat whatever I want, whenever I want, at my own small table by the window. The morning light streams in, illuminating the single placemat, the cup of tea growing cold, the half-finished crossword puzzle. It's quiet here. Peaceful. No one criticizes the way I chew. No one sends me to eat somewhere else because my presence makes the children uncomfortable. The garage. Even now, 5 years later, I can smell the motor oil and dust, feel the concrete floor beneath my feet as I sat on that folding chair with my dinner plate balanced on my knees. I can hear the laughter from inside the house, the warm conversation I was no longer welcome to join. Sarah's voice, light and musical, explaining to the children why Grandma needed to eat separately. She's going through a phase, darlings. Sometimes older people get confused about proper behavior. I was 67 years old, and I ate my dinner in the garage like a dog. The memory makes my stomach clench, but I don't push it away anymore. My therapist, Dr. Rivera, taught me that. Don't run from the memories, Margaret. They're proof of what you survived. They're proof of your strength. It took me 3 years to believe her. I pick up the invitation again, running my finger over Emma's name. She called me herself, 2 weeks ago. Her voice was different, older, steadier, but with that same hint of the little girl I remembered. Grandma Maggie, she'd said, and I'd nearly dropped the phone. No one had called me that in years. I know things have been complicated. But I'm getting married, and I can't imagine walking down that aisle without you there. I'd cried then, standing in my kitchen, gripping the phone like a lifeline. Are you sure, sweetheart? Your mother. Mom doesn't get to decide who I love, Emma had said, and there was steel in her voice that reminded me of myself, back when I still had fight left in me. She doesn't get to decide who belongs in my life anymore. The photo stares back at me from the table, that perfect family tableau. How many people saw this picture over the years? How many times did Sarah show it to friends, to neighbors, to anyone who would listen, as proof of what a devoted daughter she was. Look how well I take care of Mom. Look how happy we all are together. But I see the truth now, in the space between smiles and the shadow in my own eyes. I see the woman who was slowly disappearing, piece by piece, meal by meal, until she was nothing but a ghost haunting the edges of her own life. I stand up, my joints protesting only slightly, another gift of my freedom. I walk to my bedroom and open the closet, pulling out the dress I bought last week. It's navy blue with small white flowers, modest but elegant. I haven't worn anything this pretty in years. During those dark times, Sarah chose my clothes, always selecting the most frumpy, outdated pieces from my closet. We want you to look dignified, Mom, not like you're trying to be young again. This dress makes me feel like myself. Like Margaret Chen, not just Sarah's difficult mother or the crazy old woman who lived in the garage. Like the woman who raised a daughter, who loved a husband, who built a life with her own 2 hands. Next month, I'll walk into that wedding venue. I'll see faces I haven't seen in years, people who believed Sarah's carefully constructed narrative about her unstable mother. Some will whisper, wondering why I'm there. Others will look at me with pity or confusion. But Emma asked me to come. My granddaughter, who finally saw through the perfect family portrait to the broken woman barely visible in the background. My granddaughter, who chose love over appearances, truth over comfort. I hang the dress carefully back in the closet and return to the living room. The photograph sits where I left it, but it looks different now. Smaller, somehow. Less powerful. It's just a picture now, not a prison. I have a wedding to attend. I smooth the tablecloth one more time, adjusting the centerpiece of yellow roses, Robert's favorite flowers, though he's been gone 6 months now. The dining room looks perfect for my 57th birthday dinner, the good china catching the warm light from the chandelier he installed when we first moved into this house. Sarah will be here soon with David and the children, and I want everything to be just right. The doorbell rings, and I hurry to answer it, my heart lifting at the sound of Emma's voice calling, "Grandma," through the door. When I open it, she launches herself into my arms, all 8 years of her wrapped around my waist like a little monkey. Jake hangs back, suddenly shy at 6, but grins when I ruffle his dark hair. "Happy birthday, Mom," Sarah says, leaning in to kiss my cheek. At 35, she's radiant, her honey blonde hair perfectly styled, her real estate success evident in the designer dress and confident smile. She hands me a bottle of wine, something expensive looking that I'll probably never open. "The house looks wonderful. You've been keeping busy." There's something in her tone, a slight edge that makes me pause. But David steps forward with his easy smile, wrapping me in a bear hug that smells of aftershave and printer ink from his law firm. "Margaret, you look fantastic." "Doesn't she, honey?" Sarah's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. "Of course she does. Though Mom, are you sure you're eating enough? You look a little thin." I glance down at myself, puzzled. I've actually gained weight since Robert died, comfort eating, Dr. Martinez had warned me about during my last checkup. But Sarah's looking at me with that concerned expression she's perfected, the one that makes me question my own perceptions. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just excited to have you all here. Come in, come in." The children race ahead to the living room, their laughter echoing through the house. It's been so quiet since Robert passed, and their voices fill the empty spaces like music. I watch Sarah take in the rooms as we walk through, her real estate agent's eye cataloging everything. "Mom, you really should consider updating this wallpaper," she says, running her manicured fingers along the kitchen wall. "It's so dated. And this lighting, it's practically medieval." "Your father picked that wallpaper," I say quietly, defensive. "We chose it together." I know. But Dad's gone now, and you need to think about living in the present." Her voice is gentle, but there's steel underneath. I'm just looking out for you. This house is getting to be too much for one person. David appears in the doorway, having corralled the children. Something smells incredible in here. Is that your famous pot roast? It is, I say, grateful for the subject change. Though I'm not sure it's quite right. I kept forgetting to check on it. Sarah immediately moves to the stove, lifting the lid with authority. Oh, Mom. This is completely overcooked. Look at how tough the meat is. She pokes at it with the fork, shaking her head. You used to be such a good cook. Maybe you should let me handle dinner next time. My cheeks burn with embarrassment. The roast looks fine to me, but Sarah's always been the expert on everything. Even as a child, she could spot flaws I couldn't see, point out mistakes I didn't know I was making. I'm sure it's delicious, David says quickly, but I catch the look he exchanges with Sarah. A married couple's silent communication that excludes me completely. It's fine, I mutter, but my confidence wavers. I'll make gravy to help with the texture. No, sit down. You're the birthday girl. Sarah's already taking over, moving through my kitchen with practiced efficiency. I'll fix this. You just relax with David and the kids. I want to protest, but the children are tugging at my sleeves, wanting to show me their artwork from school. By the time we sit down to dinner, Sarah has somehow transformed my simple meal into something that looks like it came from a restaurant. The children praise the food. This is the best pot roast ever, Mom. And I feel simultaneously grateful and diminished. Sarah's always been talented in the kitchen, I say, trying to smile. Even as a little girl. Well, someone had to be, Sarah laughs, but there's no humor in it. Remember how you used to burn everything? Poor Dad, he was so patient with your cooking experiments. The comment stings, though I'm not sure why. Robert never complained about my cooking. He always said I made the best Sunday dinners in the neighborhood. But maybe he was just being kind. Maybe I never noticed all the times he choked down burned roasts and oversalted vegetables. Grandma's food is always good, Emma says loyally, and I could kiss her for it. Of course it is, sweetheart, Sarah says, reaching over to straighten Emma's collar. We're just saying she's getting a little forgetful. It happens when people get older. I'm 57, not 97, I say, trying to keep my voice light. I know, Mom. But you've been through so much stress with Dad's passing. It's natural to be a little scattered. Sarah's voice is full of sympathy, but her eyes are calculating. That's why I worry about you living here alone. This house is so big, so isolated. What if something happened? David nods thoughtfully. She has a point, Margaret. Maybe it's time to consider downsizing. There are some lovely senior communities. I'm not ready for that, I interrupt, panic rising in my chest. This is my home. Robert and I built our life here. But it's just a house now, Sarah says gently. And houses are meant to be lived in, not preserved like museums. You're holding on to the past, Mom. It's not healthy. I look around the dining room, at the family photos on the sideboard, the handmade curtains I sewed when Sarah was in high school, the worn spot in the carpet where Robert's chair used to scrape. It's not just a house. It's my history, my identity, my anchor in a world that suddenly feels uncertain. I'm not moving, I say firmly. Not yet. Sarah sighs, the sound of a patient daughter dealing with a stubborn parent. We'll talk about it later. Tonight is about celebrating you. But the celebration feels hollow now, tainted by the suggestion that I'm incompetent, forgetful, a burden. When Sarah brings out the bakery cake, beautiful and perfect, nothing like the lopsided birthday cakes I used to make, I smile and blow out the candles. I make a wish that things could go back to the way they were before, when I felt capable and confident in my own home. Later, as they're leaving, Sarah lingers in the doorway. I'm going to call you tomorrow, okay? We need to talk about getting you some help around here. Maybe a cleaning service, or someone to do the shopping. I can manage. I know you think you can, but I can see the signs. We all can. She kisses my forehead like I'm a child. Let me take care of you, Mom. It's what Dad would have wanted. I watch her walk to the car, her family surrounding her like a protective shield. Through the window, I see her talking to David, their heads bent together in serious conversation. About me, I realize. About my failings, my forgetfulness, my inability to manage on my own. I close the door and lean against it, my home suddenly feeling less like a sanctuary and more like evidence of my inadequacy. The kitchen still smells like the pot roast I ruined, the dining room holds the echo of my daughter's gentle corrections. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am losing my grip on things. Maybe the woman who raised a successful daughter and loved a good man for 37 years is disappearing, piece by piece, meal by meal. I don't know it yet, but this is how it begins. Not with cruelty or obvious abuse, but with love that feels like judgment, help that feels like invasion, and care that slowly, systematically, strips away everything I thought I knew about myself. The moving truck sits in my driveway like a beast, its mouth open wide, swallowing box after box of my daughter's life. I watch from the kitchen window as David directs the movers, his sleeves rolled up, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool October air. Sarah supervises from the porch, her voice carrying across the yard as she instructs them where to put everything. This is just temporary, Mom, she'd said 2 weeks ago, her hand warm on my shoulder as we sat in my living room. Just until we find the right house. The market is so competitive right now, and with the kids in school, we need to be strategic. Their rental lease had ended unexpectedly when the owner decided to sell. Sarah had called me in tears, real tears, I was sure, explaining how impossible it was to find something suitable on short notice. How could I say no? This house has 4 bedrooms, and I'm just one person rattling around in all this space. It'll be fun, she'd said, brightening. Like when you were little and we'd have sleepovers in the living room. The kids will love spending time with Grandma. Now, watching their furniture crowd into my hallway, I'm not so sure. The beautiful mahogany dining set they're bringing will barely fit in my dining room alongside my own table. Sarah has already suggested we put mine in storage. Just temporarily, until we move out. It makes more sense to use the bigger set for family dinners. Emma runs past me, her arms full of stuffed animals, Jake close behind with his collection of toy cars. Their laughter echoes through the house, and I can't help but smile. Maybe Sarah's right. Maybe this will be good for all of us. Mom, we need to talk about the sleeping arrangements, Sarah says, appearing in the kitchen doorway. She's changed from her moving clothes into a crisp white blouse and navy slacks, looking every inch the successful real estate agent even on moving day. I was thinking David and I would take the master bedroom, it's so much bigger than the guest room, and we have more furniture. But that's my room, I say, confused. Robert and I. I know. But you're just one person, and we're a family of 4. It makes logical sense. Her voice is reasonable, patient. You could take the guest room, or even better, the small room at the end of the hall. It would be like having your own private suite. The small room at the end of the hall is barely bigger than a closet. Robert used it as a study, and it doesn't even have a window. I don't understand. I thought you'd use the guest room. Mom, be practical. David and I need space for our work clothes, and I have client files that need to be secure. The master bedroom has that walk-in closet and the ensuite bathroom. It just makes sense. Everything Sarah says makes sense. It always does. But something in my chest tightens, a feeling I can't quite name. I'd rather stay in my own room. Sarah's smile falters for just a moment. This is exactly what I was worried about. You're being rigid, Mom. Inflexible. We're family, we should be able to compromise. But I'm not asking you to compromise. I'm asking to stay in my own bedroom, in my own house. Your house. Sarah's voice rises slightly. Mom, this is our family home. This is where I grew up. These are my memories too. I feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. Of course this is her childhood home. Of course she has claim to it. But it's also the room where I slept beside Robert for 37 years, where I cried over infertility struggles and celebrated Sarah's first steps, where I held vigil during his final illness. I just need a little time to think about it, I say weakly. Of course, Sarah says, but her tone suggests I'm being unreasonable. Take all the time you need. We'll just sleep on the couch tonight. The guilt hits me like a physical blow. Here I am, being selfish about a room while my daughter and her family are homeless. What kind of mother am I? No, I say quickly. You're right. The master bedroom makes more sense for a family. Sarah's smile returns, radiant and warm. I knew you'd understand. You're the best, Mom. Within an hour, my belongings are moved to the small room at the end of the hall. It feels like a cave, dark and cramped, with barely enough space for my bed and dresser. The master bedroom quickly fills with Sarah and David's things, her vanity table by the window, his exercise bike in the corner, their wedding photo on the nightstand where mine used to sit. Isn't this cozy? Sarah says, appearing in my doorway. And look how much more room we have for the kids to play in the living room now. I nod, forcing a smile. It is cozy. And the children's laughter does fill the house beautifully. Maybe I was being selfish. Over the next few days, the changes multiply. Sarah takes over the kitchen, reorganizing everything according to her system. You'll love this, Mom. Everything's so much more efficient now. My coffee mugs disappear into a high cabinet I can't reach. My reading glasses, which I always kept on the counter, are relocated to a drawer. We need to keep the counters clear for food prep. I can't find anything, I tell her, frustrated after spending 10 minutes looking for a can opener. You'll adjust, she says cheerfully. Change is hard, but it's good for us. It keeps the brain active. The bills start arriving addressed to Sarah. I'm just helping you get organized, she explains when I ask about it. You were so scattered after Dad died, and some of these were overdue. I don't want you to worry about money on top of everything else. But I've been managing fine. Have you? She pulls out a folder, showing me late notices I don't remember receiving. Look at this. The electric bill was 2 months behind. And this credit card statement, you were paying just the minimum balance. The interest charges alone were costing you hundreds of dollars. I stare at the papers, confused. I've always been careful with money, always paid bills on time. But the evidence is right there in black and white. Maybe the grief affected me more than I realized. I can handle my own finances, I say, but even I can hear the uncertainty in my voice. Of course you can. But why should you have to? I'm here now. Let me take care of you. The phrase becomes a refrain, let me take care of you. When I struggle to reach something in the reorganized kitchen. When I can't find the phone number for my doctor because Sarah has filed it in her new system. When I want to call my neighbor Agnes but Sarah suggests I rest instead. You look tired, Mom. Are you sleeping well in your new room? I'm not sleeping well. The room is too small, too dark, too far from the sounds of the house. But I don't want to complain. Sarah is doing so much, sacrificing so much to help me. I'm fine, I lie. Are you sure? You seem a little off lately. Maybe you should see Dr. Martinez. Sometimes stress can affect memory, concentration. I haven't felt off, but Sarah notices things I miss. She's always been perceptive, even as a child. If she thinks I'm struggling, maybe I am. The children adapt quickly to the new arrangement. Emma helps Sarah in the kitchen, learning to cook the right way. Jake plays with his toys in the living room that's now designated as their space. They're polite to me, sweet even, but there's a distance that wasn't there before. They're just adjusting, Sarah explains when I mention it. Kids need routine, structure. They're still figuring out how to relate to you in this new dynamic. New dynamic. As if I'm the one who's changed, who's disrupting their family harmony by existing in my own house. 3 weeks into the arrangement, I wake up one morning and can't remember where I put my wedding ring. I always take it off at night, place it carefully on the nightstand. But the small room doesn't have a nightstand, and I can't find it anywhere. I search frantically, tears streaming down my face. It's the last tangible connection to Robert, and I've lost it. Mom, what's wrong? Sarah appears in the doorway, concern etched on her features. My ring, I sob. I can't find my wedding ring. She helps me search, moving boxes, checking pockets, even looking in the bathroom. Finally, she finds it in the kitchen, next to the sink. You must have taken it off while doing dishes, she says gently. See? This is what I was worried about. You're getting a little forgetful. I stare at the ring, trying to remember removing it in the kitchen. I have no memory of doing dishes yesterday. Sarah did them all, like she does everything now. I don't remember taking it off there, I say weakly. That's okay, Mom. Memory issues are normal at your age, especially after a loss like Dad's. She pats my shoulder. The important thing is we found it. Maybe you should let me hold on to it for safekeeping. No, I say quickly, sliding the ring back onto my finger. I need to wear it. Sarah's smile tightens slightly. Of course. But maybe keep it on all the time. So you don't lose it again. I nod, grateful for the solution. But as I make my way to the small room at the end of the hall, I can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. The house doesn't feel like home anymore. I don't feel like myself. But Sarah is taking care of me, just like she promised. This is what family does. This is love. Isn't it? The sound of laughter drifts through the kitchen window as I sit at the small card table David set up for me in the garage. My dinner, leftover meatloaf and green beans, grows cold on the paper plate while I listen to my family enjoying their meal inside. The overhead fluorescent light flickers, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor where oil stains from Robert's old Buick still mark the ground like memories. It's been a year since they moved in. A year of watching my house transform into something I no longer recognize, of feeling like a guest in my own home. But this, eating alone in the garage like some kind of unwelcome animal, this is new. It's just temporary, Mom, Sarah had said 3 weeks ago, her voice gentle but firm. Just until you learn to chew more quietly. The children are at such impressionable ages, and they're starting to copy your habits. I had stared at her, confused. My habits. The way you smack your lips when you eat. The little moaning sounds you make when you're enjoying your food. It's really quite distracting. She'd smiled that patient smile I'd grown to dread. I know you don't realize you're doing it, but it's become quite pronounced. David's noticed it too. I'd looked to David for confirmation, but he'd simply nodded, his eyes not quite meeting mine. It's nothing to be embarrassed about, Margaret. My grandmother did the same thing as she got older. But I don't. That's part of the problem, Sarah had interrupted softly. You're not aware of it. Yesterday, Emma actually asked me why Grandma makes funny noises when she eats. I had to explain that sometimes people develop habits without realizing it. The shame had burned in my chest like acid. I'd never noticed myself making noises while eating. But then again, I'd never noticed a lot of things Sarah pointed out: the way I shuffled my feet, the way I repeated stories, the way I stared off into space during conversations. "I'll try to be more careful," I'd said quietly. "I know you will, but it's hard to change ingrained behaviors. This way, you can practice eating properly without the pressure of performing in front of the children." It's really quite thoughtful when you think about it. Thoughtful. That's what Sarah called it when she banished me to the garage with my meals. An act of consideration, not cruelty. The card table wobbles as I try to cut the meatloaf. One of the legs is shorter than the others, and every movement sends ripples through my milk glass. I should ask David to fix it, but I don't want to be a bother. I'm already enough of a burden. Through the thin walls, I hear Emma's voice. "Mom, can I have more potatoes?" "Of course, sweetheart." "David, pass the butter." The casual warmth of family conversation flows around me, but I'm not part of it anymore. I'm the crazy grandmother who makes embarrassing noises, who needs to be hidden away so the children don't learn bad habits. I take a careful bite of meatloaf, hyper-aware of every sound I make. Do I really smack my lips? Do I make those moaning sounds Sarah described? I try to eat silently, but now every swallow seems deafeningly loud in the concrete echo chamber of the garage. The door from the kitchen opens, and Jake peeks out. At 7 years old, he's still small enough to squeeze through the partially open door without fully entering my exile. "Hi, Grandma," he says, his voice uncertain. "Hello, sweetheart," I say, my heart lifting at the sight of him. "How was school today?" "Good." He fidgets with the doorknob. "Mom says you're sick and that's why you eat out here." "I'm not sick, Jake. I'm just. She says you might be contagious." His dark eyes, so like his father's, look worried. "I don't want to get sick too." The door closes with a soft click, leaving me alone again with the fluorescent light and the smell of motor oil. Contagious. Sarah told the children I'm contagious. I push the green beans around my plate, my appetite gone. When did I become someone to be feared? When did my presence become something toxic, something that needed to be contained? The garage door is partially open, letting in the evening air. I can see Mrs. Patterson from next door walking her little terrier, and I almost call out to her. But what would I say? That I'm eating in the garage because my daughter thinks I'm too disgusting to dine with. That I'm supposedly contagious with some mysterious illness that makes me chew too loudly. Mrs. Patterson waves when she sees me, and I wave back, wondering what she thinks about the woman eating alone in her garage. Does she know I used to host dinner parties in this house? Does she remember the elaborate Christmas meals I used to prepare, the way Robert would carve the turkey at the head of our dining room table while I orchestrated the rest of the meal like a conductor? The kitchen door opens again, and Sarah appears with a thermos of coffee and a small plate of cookies. "How are you doing out here, Mom?" she asks, settling into the folding chair David brought out for her visits. "I brought you some coffee. I noticed you barely touched your dinner." "I'm not very hungry," I say. "You need to eat. You're getting too thin." She studies my face with clinical interest. "Are you feeling all right? You look a little pale." I want to tell her that I feel like I'm disappearing, that eating alone in the garage makes me feel less human each day. But I know what she'll say, that I'm being dramatic, that this is temporary, that she's only trying to help. "I'm fine," I lie. "Good. Because I wanted to talk to you about something." She leans forward, her expression serious. "David and I have been discussing your situation, and we think it might be time to consider some professional help." My blood runs cold. What kind of help? "Well, there's your eating issues, and then there's the forgetfulness, the confusion about where you put things. Yesterday you couldn't remember where you'd put your glasses, and they were on your head." She laughs softly. "We're worried about you, Mom. These could be early signs of dementia." "I don't have dementia," I say quickly. I'm just adjusting. I know it's scary to think about, but ignoring the signs won't make them go away. There are wonderful facilities that specialize in memory care. Places where you'd be safe, where trained professionals could help you. You want to put me in a home. The words come out as a whisper. Not a home, Mom. A care facility. Somewhere you'd get the attention you need. Her voice is gentle, but there's steel underneath. You can't keep living like this, isolated, confused. It's not fair to you or to the children. I look around the garage, at the concrete floor, the flickering light, the card table with its wobbly leg. This is what my life has become. This is what I've been reduced to. I don't want to go anywhere, I say. This is my home. But is it really, anymore? Sarah asks softly. You're not happy here. You're not comfortable. Maybe it's time to consider what's best for everyone. Everyone. Not what's best for me, but what's best for everyone. And I know who everyone means: Sarah, David, Emma, Jake. The real family, the ones who matter. I'll think about it, I say, because I don't know what else to say. That's all I ask. Sarah stands, smoothing her skirt. Take your time. But remember, Mom, we love you. Everything we do is because we love you. She disappears back into the warm, bright kitchen, and I'm alone again with my cold dinner and my confusion. Through the window, I can see them clearing the table, Emma helping stack plates while Jake runs his toy cars along the windowsill. A perfect family scene, unmarred by my embarrassing presence. I try to take another bite of meatloaf, but it tastes like sawdust. The fluorescent light flickers again, and for a moment, I'm plunged into darkness. When it comes back on, I see my reflection in the window, a thin, pale woman eating alone in a garage, looking more like a ghost than a grandmother. Maybe Sarah's right. Maybe I am sick. Maybe I am contagious, not with germs, but with sadness, with the kind of brokenness that spreads to everyone around me. I finish my dinner in silence, listening to the sounds of family life from inside the house. When I'm done, I'll take my plate to the kitchen, wash it quietly, and retreat to my small room at the end of the hall. I'll try not to make any noise, try not to be a burden, try not to exist too loudly in the space that used to be my own. Tomorrow night, I'll eat in the garage again. And the night after that. Until I learn to be the kind of person who deserves to sit at the table with her family. Or until I disappear entirely. The camera flash blinds me momentarily as I force my lips into what I hope passes for a smile. Sarah's arm tightens around my shoulders, pulling me closer as her friend Linda takes another photo at the church potluck. One more, Linda chirps, adjusting her angle. You two look so sweet together. Sarah, you're such a devoted daughter. Oh, I just do what anyone would do, Sarah says, her voice warm with false modesty. Mom means the world to me. We're practically inseparable these days. Inseparable. The word tastes bitter in my mouth. If only Linda knew how separate I really am, eating alone in the garage, speaking only when spoken to, existing like a shadow in the corners of my own home. Margaret, you're so lucky to have Sarah, Linda continues, lowering her camera. My mother lives in one of those awful assisted living places. She's always complaining about the food, the staff, everything. But look at you, you're glowing. Glowing. I wonder if she can see the way my hands shake, the way I've lost 20 pounds because eating in the garage has destroyed my appetite. I wonder if she notices how I flinch when Sarah touches me, how I struggle to remember what I'm supposed to say in these moments. We have our system down to a science, Sarah says, her grip on my shoulder conveying a clear message: smile, nod, play your part. Mom's been having some memory issues lately, nothing serious, just the normal aging process, but we found that structure and routine really help. Memory issues. The phrase follows me everywhere now, Sarah's explanation for any behavior she deems inappropriate. When I couldn't remember the name of Pastor William's wife last week, it was my memory issues. When I asked twice about the time of the church service, it was my memory issues. When I stood up to leave the potluck early because I was exhausted, it was my memory issues making me confused about social cues. That's so wise of you, Linda says, beaming at Sarah. You're a natural caregiver. Your mother is blessed to have you. Well, family is everything, Sarah replies, and I feel her fingers dig deeper into my shoulder. We stick together through thick and thin. Don't we, Mom? I nod because that's what's expected of me. Because I've learned that disagreeing with Sarah in public brings consequences that are far worse than this performance. The last time I tried to speak up at a family gathering, Sarah's cousin Beth was visiting for Thanksgiving. I'd mentioned feeling tired and wanting to lie down, and Beth had offered to help me to my room. Sarah had intervened immediately. Oh, Beth, that's so sweet of you, but Mom gets confused about directions sometimes. She might lead you to the wrong room or get lost on the way. Sarah's laugh had been light and carefree, but her eyes had been steel. I'll take her in a few minutes. She just needs to finish her coffee first. I'd sat there, mortified, while Beth looked at me with pity. Sarah had painted me as a doddering old woman who couldn't find her way around her own house. And later, when we were alone, she'd made it clear that my attempt to leave the gathering early had been selfish and attention-seeking. The family came here to see you, Mom, she'd said, her voice sharp with disappointment. And you wanted to abandon them to go take a nap. How do you think that made them feel? Now, at the church potluck, I know better than to try to leave early. I know better than to contradict Sarah's narrative about my condition. I know better than to do anything that might crack the perfect facade she's constructed. Margaret, how are you feeling these days? Asks Mrs. Henderson, the church secretary. She's known me for 15 years, watched me organize bake sales and coordinate volunteer schedules. But now she speaks to me slowly, carefully, as if I might not understand. I'm fine, thank you, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. She has good days and bad days, Sarah jumps in before I can say more. Today's a good day, aren't you, Mom? You've been so alert and engaged. The implication is clear, there are bad days when I'm not alert or engaged. Days when I'm confused, difficult, burdensome. Sarah has been preparing everyone for my decline, priming them to see me as a woman losing her grip on reality. Well, you look wonderful, Mrs. Henderson says kindly, but I can see the concern in her eyes. Are you still reading? You used to love those mystery novels. She tries to read, Sarah answers again, but her concentration isn't what it used to be. Sometimes she'll read the same page over and over and not remember what she's read. This is news to me. I've been reading just fine, when I can find the books Sarah keeps reorganizing. But I don't dare contradict her. Not here, not in front of everyone. That's such a shame, Mrs. Henderson murmurs. But it's wonderful that she has you to take care of her. I consider it a privilege, Sarah says, and her voice is so sincere that I almost believe her myself. Mom took care of me my whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of her. The photographer from the church newsletter appears, asking for a photo for the upcoming issue about family caregiving. Sarah immediately positions me beside her, arranging my hands in my lap, smoothing my hair. This is perfect, the photographer says. The devoted daughter and her beloved mother. It's exactly the kind of story our readers love. I sit perfectly still as the flash goes off again and again. In these photos, I'll look like a contented elderly woman being lovingly cared for by her attentive daughter. No one will see the terror in my eyes, the way I've learned to make myself smaller and smaller until I barely exist at all. Sarah, you should write an article about caregiving, suggests Helen Morrison, the newsletter editor. Our readers would love to hear your perspective on caring for aging parents. Oh, I couldn't, Sarah says, but I can see she's pleased by the idea. I'm not an expert or anything. But you're living it, Helen insists. You're managing your mother's care with such grace. I'm sure other families would benefit from your insights. Well, if you think it would help people. Sarah trails off, the picture of humble reluctance. I watch this exchange with growing horror. Sarah is going to write about me, about my supposed decline, about her selfless sacrifice in caring for me. She's going to turn my humiliation into her triumph, my degradation into her sainthood. I think it's wonderful that you're so involved in your mother's care, Linda says. So many adult children just dump their parents in nursing homes and forget about them. I could never do that, Sarah says firmly. Mom needs consistency, familiar surroundings. Moving her to a facility would be traumatic for someone in her condition. Her condition. As if I have some diagnosed illness instead of being a woman who's been systematically broken down by her own daughter's cruelty. You're an inspiration, Mrs. Henderson says, patting Sarah's hand. The way you've structured your life around your mother's needs, it's truly admirable. If only they knew the truth. If only they could see me eating alone in the garage, sleeping in the tiny room at the end of the hall, tiptoeing through my own house like an unwelcome ghost. If only they could see the way Sarah's kindness evaporates the moment we're alone, the way her gentle voice turns cold and cutting when there's no audience to impress. But they can't see it, because Sarah is a master performer. She's created a character, the perfect daughter caring for her declining mother, and she plays it flawlessly. And I've become a prop in her performance, a supporting actor in the drama of her virtue. The potluck is winding down, and Sarah begins making our excuses. Mom gets tired easily these days, she explains to the lingering guests. I need to get her home for her afternoon rest. Of course, Linda says. You take such good care of her. As we walk to the car, Sarah maintains her performance, her arm linked through mine as if I might stumble without her support. But once we're inside the car, her grip becomes painful. You did well today, she says, her voice neutral. No embarrassing outbursts, no awkward questions. I'm proud of you. Proud of me. For playing along with my own degradation. For allowing myself to be portrayed as a mentally declining burden. For smiling for the cameras while my soul withers away. Can I ask you something? I venture as we pull out of the parking lot. Of course. Why do you tell people I have memory problems? I don't think I do. Sarah's laugh is light, but there's an edge to it. Oh, Mom. The fact that you don't remember having memory problems is actually a classic symptom. It's called anosognosia, the inability to recognize your own cognitive decline. I don't know what to say to that. She has a medical term for my confusion, a clinical explanation for my reality. Who am I to argue with her certainty? The important thing is that people understand your situation, she continues. That way, they're not shocked when you have episodes. They're prepared for it. Episodes. Another word for my supposed defiance, my attempts to maintain any semblance of dignity or independence. As we drive home, I stare out the window at the familiar streets of my neighborhood. These people have known me for decades, but now they see me only through Sarah's lens. I'm no longer Margaret Chen, the woman who organized charity drives and hosted book clubs. I'm Sarah's project, her burden, her cross to bear. And the most terrifying part is that I'm starting to believe her version of me. Maybe I am confused. Maybe I am declining. Maybe I am lucky to have such a devoted daughter. Maybe this is just what love looks like when you're old and useless and in the way. Emma finds me in the laundry room, folding towels with mechanical precision. At 10 years old, she's grown quieter over the past year, watching everything with those dark eyes that seem too old for her face. She hovers in the doorway, her fingers twisting the hem of her school uniform. Grandma, she whispers, glancing over her shoulder to make sure we're alone. Are you really sick? I pause, a towel half folded in my hands. What do you mean, sweetheart? Mom says you have brain problems. That's why you can't eat with us anymore. Her voice is small, uncertain. But you seem okay to me. My heart breaks a little more. Even the children have been fed Sarah's narrative about my decline. I'm not sick, Emma. It's complicated. But why do you eat in the garage? It's cold out there. And it smells funny. I want to tell her the truth, that her mother has banished me like a misbehaving pet, that I've been stripped of my dignity one meal at a time. But what would that accomplish? It would only confuse her, force her to choose between her mother and her grandmother. Your mom thinks it's better this way, I say carefully. She's trying to help me. Emma's face scrunches up in confusion. But you're sad. I can tell. You're always sad now. The observation cuts deep because it's true. I am always sad now. The joy has been leached out of my life so gradually that I almost didn't notice it disappearing. Sometimes grown-ups go through difficult times, I tell her. But that doesn't mean you need to worry about me. I do worry, though. She steps closer, her small hand reaching out to touch my arm. I miss you. I miss when you used to help me with my homework at the kitchen table. I miss when you'd make me hot chocolate and tell me stories about when Mom was little. The memories she's describing feel like they belong to someone else, some other grandmother who was allowed to be part of her grandchildren's lives. I miss those times too. Mom says you can't help me with homework anymore because you get confused with the new math. But I have regular math homework. Just adding and subtracting. I stare at her, feeling a familiar rage building in my chest. Sarah has cut me off from even the simplest interactions with my grandchildren, claiming I'm too mentally impaired to help a 10-year-old with basic arithmetic. I could help you, I say quietly. If your mom says it's okay. Emma's face falls. She won't say it's okay. She says you might teach me wrong things by accident. The laundry room door suddenly opens, and Sarah appears, her smile bright and false. There you are, Em. I was looking for you. Her gaze shifts to me, and I see the warning in her eyes. What are you two talking about? Nothing, Emma says quickly, but her voice is guilty. Just folding laundry, I add, my hands trembling slightly as I resume my task. Emma, why don't you go finish your homework? I'll be up to check it in a few minutes. Sarah's voice is gentle, but it's clearly a dismissal. Emma hesitates, looking between her mother and me. For a moment, I think she might say something, might ask why I can't help her with her homework or why I have to eat alone. But then she nods and slips out of the room, leaving me alone with Sarah. She's getting attached to you, Sarah says, her voice deceptively casual. I think it's because you're always available, always hovering around. It's not healthy for her. She's my granddaughter. Of course she's attached to me. But she's confused about your role in this family. She thinks you're still the same grandmother you used to be, but you're not. You're different now, and she needs to understand that. I set down the towel I'm holding, my hands shaking with suppressed emotion. What exactly do you tell her about me? The truth. That you're going through some changes, that your mind isn't as sharp as it used to be. That she needs to be patient with you. I helped her with her homework for 2 years. I never taught her anything wrong. You helped her with homework before your decline accelerated. But lately, I've noticed you struggling with simple tasks. Yesterday, you couldn't remember what day it was. Had I struggled with what day it was? The days blur together now, an endless cycle of isolation and humiliation. Maybe I had been confused. Maybe Sarah is right about my mental state. I just think it's better if the children maintain some distance, Sarah continues. For their sake and yours. They're at such impressionable ages, and they don't understand why Grandma is different now. Different. The word follows me everywhere, a constant reminder that I'm no longer the person I used to be. But am I different because I'm sick, or because Sarah has systematically stripped away every aspect of my identity? Later that evening, I'm sitting in the small room at the end of the hall when I hear voices in the kitchen. Jake is crying, his high-pitched wails echoing through the house. "I want to see Grandma," he sobs. "I want to show her my drawing." "Sweetheart, Grandma's not feeling well tonight," Sarah's voice is soothing, patient. "She needs quiet time. But she's always not feeling well. She's always in her room or in the garage. I know it's hard to understand, baby. But sometimes when people get older, they get sick in ways we can't see. Grandma's brain isn't working right anymore." My breath catches. She's telling her 7-year-old son that his grandmother's brain isn't working right. I want to march into that kitchen and show them both how well my brain works, but I know it would only make things worse. "Is she going to die?" Jake asks, his voice small and frightened. No, sweetheart. She's just different now. That's why she can't play with you the way she used to. That's why she needs to eat by herself and stay in her room most of the time." "I don't want her to be different," Jake cries. "I want her to be normal Grandma." "I know, baby. I know." I press my back against the door, tears streaming down my face. My grandchildren are grieving for me while I'm still alive, mourning the grandmother they've been told no longer exists. Sarah has murdered my relationship with them as surely as if she'd poisoned me. The next morning, I decide to try reaching out to my old friend Agnes, who lives 3 houses down. We used to have coffee every Tuesday, sharing gossip and comparing notes on our gardens. But it's been months since I've spoken to her, months since Sarah deemed my social activities too stimulating for someone in my condition. I wait until Sarah leaves for work, then walk down the street to Agnes's house. My heart pounds as I ring the doorbell, desperate for one normal conversation with someone who remembers the woman I used to be. Agnes opens the door, and her face goes through a series of expressions: surprise, concern, confusion. "Margaret," she says carefully. "How are you, dear?" "I'm fine, Agnes. I was wondering if you'd like to have coffee. Like we used to." She glances past me, as if expecting to see Sarah. "Oh, honey. I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "I just want to talk, catch up." "Sarah called me a few weeks ago," Agnes says gently. "She explained about your condition. She said you might get confused about where you are, that you might wander off." My stomach drops. She said I wander off. "She's worried about you, dear. She asked the neighbors to keep an eye on you, to call her if we see you walking alone." Agnes's voice is full of pity. "She said you've been having episodes where you don't recognize familiar places." Episodes. Wandering. Sarah has turned my neighbors into wardens, convinced them that I'm a danger to myself. Every person who used to be part of my support system now sees me as a confused old woman who can't be trusted alone. "I don't have episodes," I say weakly. "I'm fine." "Of course you are, dear. But maybe you should go back home. Sarah will be worried if she can't find you." I walk home in defeat, understanding finally how complete my isolation has become. Sarah hasn't just cut me off from my family, she's destroyed my reputation in the entire neighborhood. Every potential ally has been neutralized, every possible escape route blocked. Back in my small room, I sit on the bed and stare at the wall. The children think I'm too sick to help with homework or play games. The neighbors think I'm too confused to be trusted alone. The church community thinks I'm too mentally impaired to have meaningful conversations. Sarah has created a perfect prison, one made not of bars but of whispered concerns and pitying glances. She's convinced everyone who ever cared about me that I'm no longer worth caring about. And the most terrifying part is that I'm starting to believe them. Maybe I am confused. Maybe I am declining. Maybe the woman I used to be really is gone, and all that's left is this shadow who eats alone in the garage and frightens small children with her differentness. Maybe Sarah is right about everything, and I'm just too sick to see it. My 67th birthday passed without ceremony. No cake, no candlelight, no dinner table covered in the good china Robert and I had chosen together all those years ago. Sarah didn't forget, not exactly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she rebranded the day entirely. "Let's keep things simple this year," she'd said the week before, her tone light but final. "No need to fuss. The kids have a lot on their schedule, and you seem tired lately. We'll do something small." Something small turned out to be dinner without me. I found them in the dining room when I came out of my room just before 6. The table was already set, linen napkins, the nice silverware polished and gleaming under the chandelier. Emma was giggling about something Jake had said. David poured wine into Sarah's glass while she brought in a cake from the kitchen. My cake. A chocolate hazelnut torte, the kind I used to bake from scratch. Only this one was perfect, store-bought, sitting proudly on a silver stand. No one noticed me at first. I stood at the edge of the hallway, invisible in the dimness, watching as they laughed and clinked glasses. Then Jake looked up and pointed. "Grandma's here." They all turned, startled. Sarah's expression flickered, just for a moment, before smoothing into that polite, impersonal smile she used with sales clients. "Mom, you were resting. I didn't want to disturb you." "I thought we were having dinner together," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Oh," she said, as if she'd forgotten. "I assumed you'd already eaten. You're usually done by now." Emma's brow furrowed. "It's Grandma's birthday." Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. "We're celebrating. We got her a beautiful cake. She can have a slice after dinner." A slice. After they were done. Like a child given dessert for good behavior. I turned and walked back to the garage. The card table was still there, wobbling on the uneven floor, its surface scarred by old stains. My plate from lunch was still in the sink, I hadn't washed it yet. I sat down on the folding chair and stared at the empty table, trying to remember the last time someone looked at me with genuine affection. Not obligation. Not performance. Just love. Half an hour later, the door creaked open and David stepped into the garage, holding a small plate with a sliver of cake. "They said to bring this out to you," he said. "Happy birthday, Margaret." I took the plate with trembling hands. "Thank you." He hesitated, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "You know, Sarah means well. She just gets overwhelmed." "I know," I said, though I didn't. "Not really. Not anymore." He nodded once, then turned and left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stared at the cake, perfectly frosted, one delicate chocolate curl on top, and I didn't take a single bite. That night, I couldn't sleep. My body ached in a way I couldn't name, as though every part of me had been hollowed out and refilled with cold water. I lay in the narrow bed of the windowless room, listening to the distant hum of the refrigerator, the creaks of the house settling around its new occupants. I thought of the birthday dinners I used to host, Robert carving the roast, Sarah pretending to help with dishes, the grandchildren squealing with delight when I brought out crooked homemade cakes with far too many candles. That life felt like a dream now. A cruel, fading dream. The next morning, Sarah entered my room without knocking, holding a clipboard. "We have an appointment this afternoon," she said briskly. "Just a quick consultation. A geriatric specialist. Nothing serious, just something I want to get ahead of." I sat up slowly. I didn't agree to that. "It's just a conversation," she said, her tone clipped. "They'll run a few tests. Memory, cognition, maybe balance. Routine stuff for someone your age." "I don't need to see anyone," I said. I'm not confused. I'm just tired. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Tired is how dementia starts, Mom. You've been saying and doing things lately that don't make sense. Yesterday you put your sweater in the freezer. I stared at her. What are you talking about? I didn't. You did. I found it next to the frozen peas. I didn't say anything at the time because I didn't want to embarrass you. I had no memory of that. None. And yet, doubt coiled around my chest like smoke. What if she was right? What if I was losing pieces of myself and didn't even know it? I'm not going, I said, but the words rang hollow in the air between us. Sarah didn't argue. She just smiled and said, let's talk about it later. She left the clipboard on my dresser, a silent threat. That afternoon, I wandered into the backyard. The garden beds I'd once tended with such pride were now overgrown, neglected. The hydrangeas were choking under weeds. Robert's old bird feeder hung crooked on its post, empty. I knelt beside the rosebush we planted together the year Sarah started kindergarten and ran my fingers through the dry soil. It felt like ash. I thought about the cake. About the frozen sweater. About the clipped conversations, the forced smiles, the way even the kindest gestures came with an undertow of control. I thought about how small my life had become, confined to a single dark room and a cold dinner in the garage. And I realized, I would rather die alone in my own space than live one more year being erased by kindness. I stood up slowly, wiping the dirt from my hands. My knees protested, but I didn't care. Something inside me had shifted, not broken, but cracked open. Not rage, not even defiance. Just clarity. They would not get to write the rest of my story. It started with a shoebox. Not the kind that held shoes anymore, but one I had tucked away in the back of Robert's closet years ago, filled with old savings bonds, a worn checkbook from an account I thought I'd closed, and a slip of paper with a name and number scrawled in my late husband's blocky handwriting, Edwin M. Grant, attorney at law. Robert had always insisted we prepare, just in case, though we never imagined the storm would come not from illness or accident, but from our own daughter. I sat on the floor of the guest room closet, the door closed, the light from my old flip phone casting a blue haze across the forgotten documents. My hands trembled, not with confusion, not with age, but with resolve. I dialed the number. It rang twice. Grant and Rivera Law, a woman's voice answered. I almost hung up. But then I heard myself say, my name is Margaret Chen. I believe your office handled my late husband's trust. I need help. Within 2 days, I was sitting in a coffee shop 5 miles away from the house I no longer called home. Edwin was gone, retired to Arizona, but his young associate, Marissa Lynn, welcomed me with a warmth that almost undid me. She listened without interruption as I told her what had happened. Not the watered-down version for polite ears. The real story. The garage. The spoon-fed narrative about my decline. The exile in my own home. Marissa didn't flinch. You still have rights, Margaret. If your name is still on the deed, you have leverage. If your accounts were changed without consent, we can pursue financial coercion. It's not too late. It feels too late, I whispered. I don't even know who to trust anymore. She didn't respond right away. She just pushed a legal pad toward me and said, let's start by listing what's yours. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The decision had been made. I would leave. Not in a blaze of confrontation. Sarah thrived on controlling narratives, but quietly, like a bird slipping from an open cage before anyone noticed the latch had lifted. Over the next week, I packed in secret. Not suitcases, that would have been too conspicuous, but grocery bags, laundry baskets, small things stashed beneath the bed or layered in the back of my closet. My wedding album. Robert's cufflinks. A small ceramic angel Emma had made in kindergarten, long before she was taught to fear my presence. Every item felt like a thread being tied back to myself. Marissa helped me secure a short-term lease in a modest senior apartment complex across town, clean, quiet, and, most importantly, mine. I moved the utilities back into my name, removed Sarah as my financial proxy, and drafted a cease and desist letter to formally revoke her access to my bank accounts and personal records. Marissa filed it all discreetly. The timing would matter. I waited until the morning Sarah left for a weekend real estate seminar in Sacramento. David and the kids followed, claiming it would be a fun little getaway. I watched their SUV pull out of the driveway from behind the living room curtains. Then I picked up the phone. "I'm ready," I told Marissa. My voice didn't shake. 2 movers arrived an hour later, professionals she had hired who didn't ask questions or make conversation. I handed them the list I'd prepared: bedroom furniture, my writing desk, kitchenware from a marked cabinet, photo albums, books. "Only what's mine," I emphasized. "Nothing of theirs." They worked quickly, quietly, respectful of my space. I kept busy in the garage, sorting the last of my personal papers into 2 cardboard boxes. When I reached the bottom of the second box, I found the birthday card Emma had made for me 2 years ago, buried beneath tax returns and old insurance policies. "To Grandma, the bravest butterfly." I pressed it to my chest and didn't cry. By nightfall, the house was still. The empty guest room, once my prison, now looked like a shell. The master bedroom remained untouched, Sarah's scented candles and wrinkle-free bedding pristine. I didn't enter. I didn't need to. I left my house key on the kitchen counter beside a note. "I love you. But I will not let you erase me." I closed the door behind me, locked it from the outside one final time, and slid the second key into my pocket. The first night in the new apartment felt like walking into someone else's life. Everything was smaller, quieter. There were no echoes of Robert's slippers down the hall or Emma's childhood laughter bouncing off the walls. But there was a window beside the kitchen table that let in the morning light, and a chair that didn't wobble when I sat down to eat. I made a cup of tea, no one hovering to tell me I was holding the spoon too loud. I added a slice of lemon, just how I liked it. And when I sat down with my crossword puzzle and the soft hum of the city outside my window, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness. Not yet. But relief. 2 days later, Sarah stormed into Marissa's office with fire in her eyes and entitlement on her tongue. She demanded explanations, accused the firm of manipulating her vulnerable mother, threatened lawsuits. Marissa calmly handed her a folder. Inside were signed affidavits, banking records, notarized letters of consent. Every action Margaret Chen had taken was her own. "She's not incapacitated, Miss Patterson," Marissa said. "She's free." The call came that evening. "You ungrateful," Sarah didn't finish. Her voice cracked. "How could you do this to me? To the kids?" "I didn't do anything to them," I said. "I just stopped letting you do it to me." There was silence on the other end. Then the line went dead. I sat in the kitchen for a long time after that, listening to the hum of my refrigerator, the distant sound of someone's television down the hall. No screaming. No footsteps above me. No judgment breathing down my neck. Just me. And for once, that was enough. I didn't expect the silence to be so loud. In the first few days after leaving, the absence of noise, of Sarah's voice rising from another room, of Emma's cautious footsteps in the hallway, of the daily clatter of a life no longer mine, was disorienting. My new apartment, with its blank walls and scent of fresh paint, felt more like a hotel than a home. I walked from room to room like a stranger, touching furniture that belonged to me but didn't yet feel familiar. It was freedom, yes, but also grief. A strange, quiet mourning for something I'd fought so hard to escape. I waited for Emma to call. She didn't. Instead, 3 weeks after I moved out, I received a thick envelope in the mail bearing the name of Sarah's attorney. The return address was their firm in San Mateo, embossed in silver ink like it was an invitation instead of what it really was, an accusation. I opened it with steady hands. Inside were pages of legalese, claims that I had unlawfully removed community property, insinuations of financial instability, a veiled threat about my mental fitness. The last page was a request to sign over my interest in the house to Sarah. To preserve the family estate, it read. I laughed. Not out of humor, but disbelief. Marissa took care of it, of course. Sent a counter-letter citing elder protection laws, evidence of financial coercion, a detailed timeline of events backed by affidavits and notarized statements. Sarah hadn't expected that I'd keep records. But I had. Every bank statement, every withdrawn power of attorney form, every list of household items I'd claimed, documented. Precise. Undeniable. She's testing your boundaries, Marissa told me when we met again. Seeing if she can still control you with fear. She used to be better at hiding it, I said. She didn't have to hide it when no one believed you. That was the hardest part, not what Sarah had done, but how completely she had taken away my credibility. She hadn't just turned the children against me. She'd poisoned my name in the entire neighborhood, at church, with friends I'd known for decades. Each of them now saw me through her lens, confused, unstable, needing care. Even my closest confidants hadn't called. I imagined them whispering to one another, "It's so sad what happened to Margaret. But at least Sarah's looking out for her." I'd thought about writing letters to set the record straight. But what would I say? That I wasn't crazy, just gaslit. That I hadn't forgotten birthdays or wandered off or talked to walls, but had been erased inch by inch until even I wasn't sure who I was anymore. No, I wasn't interested in defending myself. I was interested in reclaiming what little peace I still had. Instead, I focused on building a life outside the wreckage. I started attending a small support group for older women at the library downtown. At first, I sat in the back, silent, watching others share stories of widowhood, retirement, loneliness. Then one day, a woman named Hazel talked about her daughter's sudden decision to take over her medical care, how she'd been signed into a memory clinic evaluation without consent. The shame on her face was something I recognized immediately. "Did she do it out of concern?" someone asked gently. Hazel's eyes filled with tears. "No. She did it because she could." After the meeting, I found myself walking beside Hazel on the way to the parking lot. I don't remember what I said first, something about the weather, maybe, but we ended up sitting in her car for nearly an hour, comparing notes like war veterans. By the time I left, she'd written her phone number on the back of a receipt and tucked it into my palm like a lifeline. "You're not crazy," she'd said. "They just convinced you that you were easier to manage if you doubted yourself." I taped that receipt to the inside of my medicine cabinet. The dreams came back after I left the house, but they were different now. Before, I used to dream of the garage, fluorescent lights flickering overhead, the plate on my lap always cold, the voices on the other side of the wall laughing while I sat in silence. Now I dreamt of the table Robert built in his workshop, the one we ate at for years. In the dream, it's always sunny outside, and the table is full, neighbors, friends, laughter. But the seat beside me is empty. I wake up knowing who it's meant for. And I try not to think about how I'll never sit across from Emma again unless she makes the choice to find me. One morning, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. "Is this Margaret Chen?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. This is Beverly Adler. I work with Elder Protection Services. We received an anonymous call about your former living situation. Would you be open to a visit?" The air felt tight around me. "I've already left," I said. "I'm safe now." Still, she said gently, we'd like to document your case. You wouldn't be the first. And you could help others. That afternoon, she came to my apartment. She was kind. Sharp, too. The kind of woman Sarah would have tried to charm at a fundraiser. I told her everything, not just the events, but the atmosphere. The small humiliations, the public theater, the way isolation was layered over me like a weighted blanket until I forgot how to stand. She listened. She took notes. When I finished, she looked me in the eye and said, I believe you. You're not alone. It was the first time I'd heard those words in years. Before she left, she handed me a pamphlet. We're working on legislation, she said. About coercive control and financial guardianship. It's a slow process. But your story matters. After she left, I sat with the pamphlet in my lap for a long time. Then I picked up my pen and wrote my own name on the inside cover, beneath the words, survivor willing to testify. Not for revenge. But for truth. For every woman sitting in a garage wondering if the silence in her chest means she's sick, or just being silenced. Autumn came early that year, bringing with it the kind of cold that makes bones ache before the sun even rises. The maple tree outside my apartment blushed deep crimson before shedding everything overnight. I found myself watching it slow surrender to the wind like a kindred soul. Every leaf it lost reminded me of some small thing Sarah had taken from me, until I was left bare and quiet, but still rooted. It had been nearly a year since I'd left the house. I hadn't heard from Sarah again, not since the legal pushback. But one afternoon in late October, a letter arrived with no return address, the handwriting small and unsure. I held it in my lap for several minutes, my tea growing cold beside me, before I opened it. Dear Grandma Maggie. I don't know if you want to hear from me. I'm not sure if I deserve to write you. But I miss you. I miss you every day. I recognized the rounded loops of her cursive immediately. Emma. No longer the quiet little girl with questions she wasn't allowed to ask. This was a young woman trying to gather broken threads into something resembling truth. She wrote of her confusion over the years. The moments that never sat right. The Christmas when I didn't come to the table. The birthday where my chair was left empty. She remembered the smell of motor oil on my sweater when I hugged her goodnight. And the time she asked to bring me cookies, and her mother told her, Grandma's resting. Let her be. But you weren't resting. You were hidden. And I didn't understand why. I traced my fingers over the ink, imagining her sitting at some dormitory desk, far from Sarah's curated world, finally able to breathe air that wasn't shaped by someone else's expectations. I found a photo on an old thumb drive in Dad's office, she wrote. You were helping me with my math homework. I looked so happy. You looked tired, but still smiling. I remember that day. It wasn't that long before everything changed. Jake and I used to whisper about it. We didn't understand why you were always sick, but we never saw you coughing or in bed. Just, alone. A lot. And sad. When I asked Mom last year if I could visit you, she told me you'd moved into a memory care facility and wouldn't recognize me anymore. I cried in my room for hours. But now I know she was lying. That line hit like a fist to the chest. I had spent months wondering if they had forgotten me. If Sarah had buried the truth so deep that even Emma and Jake had come to believe I'd vanished into fog. But the truth was more layered than that. They had questions. They just weren't allowed to ask them. I found you online, through the court records. Your name came up in a public case file connected to elder protection laws. I read every page twice. I saw your name listed as a potential speaker. Grandma, you're not confused. You're not sick. You were strong enough to get away. The letter ended with an address, a phone number, and a line that made my hands tremble. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I want to hear everything you couldn't say before. I'm ready now. I think I've always been ready. I folded the letter and held it to my chest, rocking slightly in the silence. The pain of knowing what she had believed for so long was tempered only by the quiet flame of hope. She had found her own way to me, through Sarah's smoke and mirrors, through whispered half-truths and deliberate erasures. She had chosen to look again. And that meant everything. I didn't write back right away. I needed time to breathe, to gather my own story without the tremble of old guilt. But the next day, I bought a small journal at the bookstore around the corner, soft leather cover, smooth pages, and I began to write. Not as a grandmother trying to explain herself, but as a woman reclaiming her voice. I wrote about the good years, the quiet pain that followed, the long winter of Sarah's control, and the first morning I drank tea alone and felt it warm my throat instead of closing it. Jake's letter came 2 weeks later. Handwritten in blue ink, his sentences stiff and unsure. Grandma, I'm sorry I believed them. I'm sorry I didn't come see you in the garage. I thought you were sick. I didn't know sick could mean something else. He was 15 now. Old enough to question, still young enough to feel shame like a second skin. He told me he remembered the way I made peanut butter toast with banana slices, the way I laughed when he lined up his toy cars on the windowsill. He remembered me before the silence. That, more than anything, broke me open. I wrote him back with trembling hands, not to explain, but to forgive. The weeks that followed were quiet. No calls from Sarah. No demands. But I imagined the ripple Emma had caused simply by searching. Sarah must have realized something had shifted. That her version of me was no longer gospel. I imagined her pacing, trying to twist the truth into another palatable story. But the difference now was this: I didn't need to defend myself. Emma and Jake had begun to see with their own eyes. One Saturday morning, I received a package at my door. No return address. Inside was a photograph, an old one. Me, seated at the kitchen table, surrounded by crayons and spelling worksheets. Emma leaning against my side, smiling up at me with 2 front teeth missing. A yellow post-it note was attached to the frame. This is the real you. I'm sorry I forgot. E. I hung it in my new kitchen, beside the window that faced the maple tree. Every morning after that, I made my tea and looked at it as the leaves continued to fall. Some things die before they are reborn. And some truths, once seen, never vanish again. The wedding invitation arrived in a cream-colored envelope with gold filigree around the edges. Tucked inside was a small handwritten note from Emma. Grandma Maggie, I meant it. I want you there. I need you there. Please come. It had been over a year since I left Sarah's house, since I'd eaten alone in the garage and tried to convince myself that love sometimes looked like exile. A year since I'd stood in the shadows of my own life and watched the world smile at the woman who banished me from her table. I hadn't been to a family gathering since. Not a holiday, not a Sunday lunch. Certainly not a wedding. But Emma was different. Emma had seen through the curtain, stepped out from under her mother's hand, and reached back for me. That mattered more than my fear. The venue was a sprawling garden estate nestled in the foothills just outside town. The kind of place Sarah would have once raved about, charming but elegant, she might have said while adjusting a centerpiece or suggesting a new floor plan. I arrived early, deliberately. I wanted to find my seat before anyone else could see me, before the gasps or whispers could start. I wore the navy blue dress with white flowers, the one I had carefully hung in my closet a year ago, untouched until now. I pinned a brooch to the collar, Robert's mother's, a small forget-me-not in faded enamel. I wore it not as a symbol of lineage, but as a quiet act of defiance. I was not forgotten. Not anymore. I walked past manicured hedges and white folding chairs into the reception area where a young woman with a headset greeted me. Name, please. Margaret Chen, I said. My voice came out steady. She scanned her list, smiled, and handed me a name card with a gold border. Head table, she said. Right side. I stared at the card in my hand. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. You're seated next to the bride. I hadn't expected that. I'd prepared for the farthest table in the corner, behind a floral arrangement, politely included but easy to ignore. I'd braced myself for the moment Sarah saw me. The instant her eyes flicked to my chair and her expression tightened, her fingers wrapping around a wine glass like it might splinter. But I hadn't prepared for this. The head table was already set. A long arrangement of pale pink roses ran its length, flanked by crystal water goblets and flickering votives. I found my seat between Emma's place card and an empty one labeled Aunt Beatrice. I sat carefully, smoothing my skirt, trying not to look too small in the grandness of it all. Guests began to arrive in clusters, their laughter rising in waves, punctuated by polite greetings and clinking glasses. I kept my head down, pretending to examine the menu tucked beneath my napkin. Then I heard the sharp click of heels against stone. I looked up. Sarah. She stood 10 feet away, frozen in place. Her mouth opened slightly, just enough to betray the shock she hadn't had time to mask. Her eyes scanned the card in my hand, then the place card beside me, and finally my face. Her smile arrived seconds too late, thin and brittle. Mom, she said. I didn't realize you'd accepted. I stood slowly. Emma invited me. Yes, well, of course she did. But the head table is. She stopped herself, glanced around, aware now of the people nearby, of the eyes that had turned toward us. You look lovely. I smiled. So do you. She stood there for another moment, as if waiting for me to apologize for showing up. When I didn't, she turned on her heel and walked briskly back toward the garden path. Her shoulders were too stiff, her gait too quick. The performance had begun to crack. The ceremony was beautiful. Emma glowed in a lace gown with sleeves like dew-kissed petals, her hair pinned with pearl combs that had once belonged to my mother. When she saw me seated beside the altar, her eyes filled with something raw, love, yes, but also sorrow for what had been lost. She walked down the aisle with purpose, and when she passed by me, she reached out and gently touched my hand. During the reception, speeches began. Toasts about love, family, legacy. Then Emma stood, holding a microphone with practiced grace. There's someone here today who wasn't sure she belonged at this table, she said, her voice clear but trembling slightly. But she does. More than anyone. The crowd murmured. Sarah shifted visibly 2 tables back, her expression carefully blank. I want to thank my grandmother, Emma continued. Not just for being here today, but for surviving, for keeping her heart open after being pushed aside, for loving me even when she was told not to. My breath caught. Around me, faces turned. Some recognized me immediately. Others blinked, trying to place the woman in the blue dress, the one who'd vanished from holidays, whose name hadn't been spoken in polite company for years. There were things I didn't understand as a child, Emma said. Things I was told about who she was, what she could or couldn't do. I see the truth now. And I'm sorry it took me this long. She raised her glass. To Grandma Maggie, for finding her way back to the table. The room filled with applause. Hesitant at first, then warm. A few people rose to their feet. Sarah did not clap. David did, his hands stiff, face unreadable. Jake stared at his sister with something like wonder. Later, Emma pulled me into a tight hug, her head resting against mine. I meant every word. I know, I whispered. I'm proud of you. Behind her, Sarah stood at the edge of the reception hall, arms folded. Our eyes met. She didn't look angry, She looked exposed, as if someone had pulled back the curtain on a stage she had controlled for too long. I didn't speak to her that night. There was nothing left to say. Sometimes, justice doesn't come as a reckoning. Sometimes it arrives as a seat at the table, a toast you were never meant to hear, and a granddaughter who sees you, truly sees you, for the first time in years. The weeks after the wedding unfolded like a slow exhale. For the first time in years, I didn't brace myself each morning for surveillance or sabotage. I didn't walk on eggshells through my own thoughts. The relief wasn't loud or euphoric. It was quiet. Steady. Like sunlight through a curtain you'd forgotten how to open. Emma called me the day after her honeymoon. Her voice was soft, still filled with awe from the ceremony, but there was something else there too, an ache she was only just beginning to name. I didn't realize how much of you I lost, she said. Until I got you back. We talked for 2 hours. About her new apartment. Her fears of repeating cycles she hadn't even known she'd grown up in. About how hard it was to explain to Jake what had changed, and why. He's angry, she said. At her. At himself. At me. He keeps saying, why didn't we know? And I don't have an answer. You weren't supposed to, I told her gently. That's the nature of that kind of manipulation. It thrives in the silence. It teaches you not to ask. Emma invited me over that weekend for tea. No family gathering, no public performance. Just the two of us in a quiet kitchen that didn't smell like tension. She made scones from a recipe she found online, too dry and a little overbaked, but when she laughed at her mistake and passed me the butter, I felt something uncoil in my chest. This was the beginning of something real. Not a restoration of the past. We couldn't return to who we'd been before Sarah intervened, but something new, built on truth instead of obligation. Jake came by halfway through our visit. He looked taller, older, eyes shadowed by things he didn't yet know how to articulate. He hovered near the doorway like he was afraid I might disappear if he stepped too close. Hi, Grandma, he said. Hi, sweetheart. He sat across from me slowly, hands in his lap, then looked me straight in the eye. Did Mom really make you eat in the garage? The question landed like a stone in still water, no anger, just the raw need to know. Yes, I said. She did. He nodded once, his jaw tightening. I'm sorry I believed her. You were just a child, I said. You trusted the people who were supposed to protect you. That's not your fault. I should have asked more questions. No, Jake, I said softly. She shouldn't have lied to you. He looked away, blinking fast. Sometimes I don't know what to believe anymore. That's okay, I said. The truth doesn't mind being questioned. Lies do. Emma reached over and placed her hand on her brother's. He didn't pull away. We began meeting weekly after that, sometimes for tea at Emma's place, sometimes at the park, sometimes just walking slowly through the farmer's market, where no one asked questions and no one treated me like a fragile relic. Jake talked more each time. Not just about the past, but about school, his drawings, how angry he got when people talked down to his grandmother at church. She still goes around telling people you're confused, he said one afternoon, stuffing his hands deep in his hoodie pocket. She says the wedding was a fluke. That you only looked put together because Emma coached you beforehand. I smiled wryly. She needs the story to stay the same. Otherwise, she has to answer for what she did. He kicked at a pebble. I told her to stop. I said if she kept lying, I'd tell everyone what really happened. She grounded me. I laughed. She's still your mother, I reminded him gently. Yeah. And you're still my grandmother. The one who made butterfly pancakes and taught me the difference between rosemary and thyme. You're real. She just played pretend better. I didn't correct him. I didn't try to soften the edges of his anger or urge him to understand the woman who had once silenced me. That would come later, if it came at all. For now, I let him have his feelings. Let him grieve in his own way. David reached out a month later. I almost didn't answer the phone. But his name blinked on the screen, and curiosity, or maybe closure, made me pick it up. "Margaret," he said, and then paused. "I wasn't sure you'd answer." I wasn't sure either. I wanted to say, "I should have done more. I should have stopped it." "You saw it," I said. "You knew." "I did," he admitted. And I told myself I was keeping the peace. That stepping in would only make it worse. But I was just a coward. I let the silence stretch. "She's furious," he added. "About Emma. About Jake. About the head table. She thinks you turned them against her." "I didn't," I said. "I just stopped being silent." He exhaled, and for a moment he sounded tired. Really tired. "I'm filing for divorce." I blinked, surprised. "Because of me?" "No. Because of her. But you gave me the courage to finally stop pretending." We didn't speak long. He didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. But the conversation ended with something like peace, a shared understanding that neither of us had been the person we needed to be back then, but we weren't stuck in that version of ourselves anymore. As winter came and the evenings grew darker, I found myself lighting candles in my small apartment, not for warmth or ritual, but to mark the space as mine. I began seeing Dr. Rivera again, not out of crisis, but to process the pieces of myself I was slowly recovering. In our sessions, we talked about boundaries, about how healing isn't always reconciliation, about how forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. Sarah never contacted me. I didn't expect her to. I didn't need her to. Some losses don't need closure. They just need to be put down gently and left behind. The morning of Emma's photo session dawns crisp and bright, the kind of winter day that tricks the eye into believing it's warmer than it is. Sunlight streams through the sheer curtains in my apartment, casting soft patterns on the hardwood floor. I sit at my kitchen table with a cup of black tea and 2 slices of toast, the butter melting slowly as steam curls from the mug. Outside, the maple tree has shed all its leaves, but its branches reach proudly toward the sky. I watch a crow hop along the railing of the balcony and, for a moment, I feel a strange lightness in my chest, not joy, not quite, but something akin to peace. The doorbell rings at exactly 10 o'clock. Emma's voice calls, "It's just me, Grandma," and I'm already smiling before I even rise from the chair. She comes in with a rush of cold air and a garment bag in one hand. "I brought options," she says, setting it on the couch. "Mom used to pick my clothes for every event. I want to choose for myself this time. But I also want your opinion. It's a small thing, maybe. But the act of asking, of valuing my voice without conditions, feels monumental." I nod and unzip the bag with her. Inside are 3 dresses, soft ivory, pale rose, and a deep emerald that catches the light with every shift. "That one," I say, touching the green. "It's bold. You're allowed to be bold." She grins. "Good. That's the one I wanted, too." While she changes in the bedroom, I lay out the tablecloth, white lace with blue embroidery, the one Robert and I bought in Portugal when Sarah was 10. It's yellowing at the edges now, a little frayed at the seams, but it still holds the weight of hundreds of meals, of laughter and crumbs and the lives that passed across it. I smooth the fabric gently and set out a vase of daisies. Simple. Honest. Enough. When Emma returns, she looks radiant. Not just because of the dress or the soft makeup she's applied, but because she stands taller now. As if, in breaking from the roles Sarah crafted for all of us, she finally learned to inhabit her own skin. "Are you ready?" she asks. as I'll ever be. The photographer is a young woman named Alejandra, recommended by one of Emma's classmates. She greets us warmly and sets up near the window, where the light spills in just right. She takes test shots, adjusts her lenses, then calls us over gently. Let's start with something simple. Just sit together. Talk. Pretend I'm not here. So we do. We sit at the kitchen table, our hands curled around teacups, and I tell her about the time Robert accidentally burned a hole in this very tablecloth trying to flambe bananas Foster. I tell her about the Saturday mornings Sarah used to beg for pancakes in the shape of stars. I tell her about the garden we once had, the one with the sunflowers that grew taller than the fence. And Emma listens, really listens, with wide eyes and an open heart, laughing in the places where laughter fits, going quiet when silence feels right. Alejandra moves around us like a breeze, capturing the kind of truth that can't be posed for. Later, she asks for a photo of just me. I hesitate, then agree. I sit upright, not stiff but proud, my shoulders squared and my gaze direct. I don't force a smile. I let my face rest in the softness of what I feel, a calm defiance, a quiet reclamation. For decades, I've been told how to look, how to behave, how to be. This time, I choose for myself. Afterward, Emma pulls out a small silver frame from her bag. I brought something, she says, holding it out. It's the old family photo, the one Sarah loved to show off. The perfect portrait around my old kitchen table, everyone smiling, everyone posed. My own face stares back at me, lips curved, eyes hollow. I thought maybe we could take a new one, Emma says softly. Something real. Something that doesn't hide. We don't recreate the original photo. We don't try to. Instead, we take a new one. Just the two of us, side by side, hands clasped. Behind us is the window, and beyond that, the bare branches of the maple tree. We're not pretending to be perfect. We're simply showing up as we are. When the session is done, Emma lingers in the doorway, her eyes full of something neither of us can quite name. You know, she says, Mom still tells people you've never forgiven her. I nod slowly. That's true. She flinches slightly, as if she'd hoped for a different answer. I reach for her hand. I've made peace with what happened, I say. But forgiveness isn't about pretending the harm never occurred. It's about choosing not to carry it. And I've put it down. But I won't pick it back up for her comfort. Emma exhales. That makes sense. It's enough, I say. And sometimes, enough is everything. That night, I hang the new photo on the wall beside the window. It's not framed in silver or printed on glossy paper. It's matte, simple, a moment caught in real light. My smile is small but unforced. Emma's hand is resting on mine. We are not performing. We are present. Beneath it, I leave the old photo in its frame, turned face down in the drawer. Let others remember what they want. I know the truth. And if anyone asks, I'll tell them, I was never lost. I was hidden in plain sight. And one day, I walked out of the garage, back into my life, and set the table again, not for appearances, but for love.